Hi and welcome. If this is the first time you're watching me, my name is Leonardo, and today's webinar is about how you can make a better presentation when you're doing your oral exams. And of course, you want to get that better grade. Now, getting grades, you have to understand, this is all about your communication on how good you know your stuff. So it's not about really how good you are in the end, because you can be great, but if you don't know how to really show how good you are or communicate how good you are, then what happens is that you get a lower grade than you actually should have gotten. Now, no, life is not fair, and that's just how it is. But here, I'm here to help you. And this webinar is exactly about this. So I'll give you some tools over the next, I would say 22 minutes, 23 minutes. I know I'm being very specific, and I did time this when I did rehearse this. So I hope that I am on time so I can show you how well you have to be prepared. So now we have 22 minutes-ish left. So the program is divided into 4 sections. Now you have to understand, when we talk about presentations, oral exams, there's 2 types. We will mainly focus on the one where you already know what you're going to talk about. However, if you do have an exam where you have to draw some questions, some not semi-random questions, well, there are going to be tools and tricks here that you can use when you also draw some questions, especially the point 4 or the section 4 of this presentation. Well, you will see that you can actually also use this when you need to use it. Anyways, let's get started. Like I said before, my name is Leonardo and I'm a presentation coach. What does that mean? Well, what it means is I help people communicate better, because communication is a big thing, it's a very abstract thing, but at the end, you know, it's difficult for a lot of people to communicate what they know, and this is where I come in. Now, real life studies, there's a slight difference, and we'll get into that, because in studies it's a bit different, real life it's, like I said, different. So the 4 sections are: 1, how to prepare your presentation better. That's the section 1. Section 2 will be how you can structure your presentation. And in section 3, I'll talk about how you can communicate better. And number 4, I'll be talking about how you can avoid that ship from sinking. And if you're wondering what does it mean with sinking, well, don't worry. If you stay around, you'll find out and you will actually see what I mean. Because of all these things, the one thing that can really help you immediately is number 4. The other ones are great, and I would say are more important than number 4. But number 4 is the one that can really save your life. So without further ado, let's get started. Now I have some notes, and I will be checking them out. Normally I don't do these presentations for exams, because I'm more in the business life, or I'm more in people who just want to communicate better. And I'm sorry about the sound. We do have some neighbors. We do have some things to look at. So yeah, I have 2 notes, and that's it. I'll try to avoid looking at them so you can see how it is in real life. Because when you do an examination, you can have notes. But the important thing is that you don't just keep your notes. Let's see. I will read them though, so you can see how you shouldn't do it and how you should do it. So the one thing, and we're at the first one, how to better prepare yourself. A lot of people say to you, you need to rehearse. And the problem with that is that when people say rehearse, they mean memorize. And I'm all against memorization. I think it's an okay tool, but the problem is that it kind of takes away focus from, it takes away focus from the material. And you don't really learn the material. It's actually, to memorize is the worst way to actually learn anything. Because you're just memorizing the things, but you're not really understanding them. So the key here is to understand things and then try to apply them, because then you start to master them. And your teachers, they don't want you to memorize things, hopefully not. They want you to understand and knowing how to use it and master it. That's what they want, because that means that they were great teachers. If you memorize, you just have good memory. But we'll get into that. Okay, first we have the rehearse part, right? And you don't read like this. No. First, you need to have a plan. What are you going to say? What is the idea of this presentation? Just like I did. I had an idea what I wanted to do with you guys, and I knew exactly where I wanted to go. I knew that my plan was to tell you about, okay, there's 2 types of presentations roughly. There is these 2, and we're going to talk specifically about this type. That's my whole goal here to talk about this type, but I will mention the second type. Now, if we talk about a project, in a project you would have maybe a successful project, and you will talk a lot about how good like the results were and how great the project you did will be for the future, whatever it is, especially if it's a product. However, what about if you didn't succeed? Well, if you didn't succeed, you're not going to show off like a great product because it's not a good product. So your focus would be on the process. That what did you learn from the process? What else could you have used? So you can show about more your work than your result, because your result was not great. So that's what I mean. Like, have a clear idea where you want to take this story, because this is all about storytelling. You're telling a story, basically. So where do you want to take this story? However, when we look about the stories and you have a clear path, well, sometimes you also have the pitfalls. And what I mean with pitfalls is, where's your weak points? And weak points can be divided into two sections. One of them is actually in your project. Maybe there's some things that didn't go so well. Like, for instance, if it's a product that you need to create, something made it so that you didn't do it that well. And it's really important to identify these things. You don't need to point them out, but it's important to know them. I'll get back to this point when we go to section 4 of this webinar. But to begin with, you have to understand that. And another thing is, when we talk about pitfalls, if you're asked a question that you don't know so much, like an area of all the questions you could have, and you don't know much about it, it's important to identify where your weak points are, so you somehow can find some small things that can save you. Like I said, we'll get back to that, but it's important to already here identify these things. What are your weak points? And I would say, and this is an important thing. Now we're going to go in a bit about movements, because like I said before, you have to plan your presentation, but I would say you can go so far as to understanding where you want to stand when, because this helps you. And I'm using the word memorize, but don't memorize by every single word. What I mean is that you memorize the sections. So if you plan even how you're going to stand where, because let's face it, most of these exams is based on the same kind of stage. It's a PowerPoint in your back here, and in most cases you have a computer, you can change slides. But yeah, all these things are almost the same. You have this amount of space, so you kind of know what the stage is. And by understanding, okay, where do I want to stand in what part of the presentation? Now, you don't need to be weird about it. Like, it's not like you have some weird positions. Just take some simple positions, maybe a bit more to the right, maybe a bit more to the left. But identifying where you want to stand will help you memorize. Now, a small side note here. And this is agent memorization technique. Again, I don't want you so much to memorize every single word. So when I say memorize, and I'll give you this example, it's not about memorizing, it's more so you understand how important visualization by memory is great. So in the ancient Greek times, they would do like long speeches, maybe 1 hour, 2 hours, right? And to memorize every single word, that's very hard. So what they would do back then is they would take their presentation and just divide it into 4 sections. Maybe 5. Like, it's not so important how many numbers, but they would divide it. So first part of the presentation, well, that would happen in one room, right? Then they would take a second part of the presentation and change scenes. So they would take another room, and they would rehearse the third and the fourth in different rooms. So just by visualizing, because they had rehearsed it in these rooms, they would know basically where to talk about what. And this helped them very much when they were doing oral presentations. And this is going way, way back. Now again, don't focus so much about memorizing word by word, it's so you understand the power of visualization by rehearsing where you're going to stand. And not only that, it also gives you a great tool already if you're moving and at your home rehearsing. And we'll get this because now we're sliding into the next part. When you're rehearsing, right? Again, it's not about memorizing. It's about, having a clear path and a clear agenda where you want to go. So when you rehearse certain positions and certain standpoints. It's going to be so easy because you're already remembering what you need to say before you're even saying it. So rehearsing, again, I've mentioned it, but in case you didn't get it, rehearsing is not about memorizing. It's about really visualization. Because the more you rehearse at home, and I mean not like reading and reading and reading, not taking a piece of paper like this and say, oh, what are we going to do? So it's more about when you like read it, fine, you read it a couple of times, but then you start rehearsing without the piece of paper. And you do it by saying all these things out loud, because without doing that, what happens is that you're not really rehearsing. Rehearsing is doing it as you would do it in real life. So once you've done it 15, 20 times, and when I say rehearse, you need to even time it. Put a timer, make sure that you are within the time that you need to be. Because one, if you go over time, you don't get to present all that you wanted. If you go under this estimated time, what happens is they can just throw a lot of questions that you're not prepared for. So this is what you want to do. Time it and rehearse it by saying it out loud and visualizing how it's happening in real life. Because once it happens in real life, you're ready. Now we're sliding into section 2, and section 2 is how do you structure it. You know, if we would have to go in and look at how you can structure these things, it's different from, well, it's from study to study, it's different from like stage to stage. So the way I'm going to teach you this, so you can use it all around, is to understand these things that are very powerful. Now, I've used this a lot, and I'll give you a story at one point in this in this webinar. And the way you would start it with is make sure that this agenda that you have in your head, that's the first thing that comes clear. Now, in real life, it's different. Real life, you come in, you need to introduce yourself, especially right now, like I did with you. I had to introduce shortly who I am, what I do. And the thing here that you are doing differently when you're studying for the exams and you go up to the exam, you just need to say, oh, my name is Michael, or whatever your name is. And then you start. But here you would say your name, and then you would start with, hey, I got this program. And you choose your PowerPoint or whatever you're using. Maybe you're using just papers or just writing on the board. And you have the program here. Now, one thing here I want to say, don't kill people about PowerPoint. Now there's a really, I don't remember his name. I think it's Simon, but he's a great presenter. Anyways, what he did was he made a very famous presentation called Deaf PowerPoint. And what this whole presentation is about is that he basically talks how about people misuse PowerPoint. And I agree. I would say 90 to 95% of all people that use PowerPoint, they totally misuse it or don't know how to use it. And what do I mean with that? Well, it's not about technicalities. I'm not talking about getting the right animations, right sounds, effects. I'm not talking, that's not important here. What I mean is that they just put too much information. And what happens is that sometimes you have basically, well, you just have too much information for the audience to actually follow your thread. But we'll get back to that. Anyways, we got it off our side note here. So how you would start would be your name and then your agenda. Clear agenda. What is your program of today? What's going to happen? How is it going to happen? So they already have a clear idea how your presentation will go. And the next thing you want to do, and this is a very powerful tool, extremely actually. If you did use any kind of resources, like any books that you use to get your results, especially if it goes outside the curriculum, this is a great tool, because you bring a lot of respected, well-known authors or books that are relevant and important for whatever you're talking about. That is so great if you use that to get your results. And not only is it great, but it's great in a way that actually it gives you credibility. It gives your project credibility. Now, you have to be honest about this. You don't take just random books and just put it in, because you could be asked questions. So the idea is to actually have used these books. But bring the books. Now you would say, yeah, but I can print stuff out from the internet, or I can show like any kind of link. It's not the same. When you bring it physically for that presentation, it got a whole different effect. I've done it like when I did live presentations for audiences, and they would say, oh, what's that book? And they were interested in the book, and whatever I said just meant way more because I had way more credibility. So already there, you're putting yourself in plus points. What's the next step? Just say go. That is the next step. Now that's what I'm saying. This like way to structure it can be used in any way. Now, how do you communicate better? I did mention briefly death by PowerPoint. Why did I bring this up? Well, the reason I brought it up is because we have a tendency to misuse PowerPoint. And what happens is there's two typical errors. One is that you write entire sentences. So two things happen here. One, you start reading, and when you're looking back and you're reading, what happens is that not only do you lose focus with your audience, what happens is basically that you start reading, but they also start reading and they stop listening to you. And instead of focusing on what you're saying, they're just reading. And this is not what you want. The second thing, and this is very connected with this, is energy. You need to bring in the right energy. If you're reading, your energy level just goes down. And you don't want to do that. Now you can say, yeah, but I'm very shy, I'm very timid. That might be, it's okay to be shy. But what's important here is that you do want to bring that energy. You do want to come in and take the stage with power and controlling the frame. Because energy is about controlling the frame. And there's different ways of having this energy. One of them is body language. If you're doing like this, you're already saying, please, I don't want to be here. And that's not what you want. What you really want is to feel secure, and you want to feel like you own the stage. And the best thing is to make sure, give yourself time. Whenever you go in, make yourself really comfortable. Maybe you're not that comfortable inside. And I do have tools that you can use to get more, to get more acquainted with the stage and get more comfortable. But if you just want to take like a tip here, if you rehearse in your mind where you would stand, then already there you are in better shape. And another thing that you have to have in your mind is also that it's not like nobody wants you to fail unless you use the last half year to piss off your teacher. Everybody wants you to succeed. Basically, there's only one stage that I've seen that people don't want you to succeed. And you may find examples as well, but the ones that I remember, comedians. Like, especially open mic nights, people like heckling, different. But in general, people want to succeed because it hurts us as an audience to see you fail. And the teacher wants you to succeed. They really trying to make the best, because you have to think about it like this. If you're flunking, that means that they're not a great teacher. If all their students are doing well, that means they're good teachers. So understanding this mindset helps you to understand they want you to have good grades. I know there's some professors that are different and they have their own mindset, but in general, most want you to actually succeed. Now, what else when we talk about communication? Well, speaking clearly is also important. So if you're like very, very low, that's not good, because what happens is if you're speaking very low, your audience, they start focusing instead of what you're saying, they're trying to hear what you're saying. So all their focus is going to like, what's that? And they're going back and forth. What's that thing that person was saying, or was it something different? And they don't follow your thread. They are like still behind and they lose too much information. Now, if you speak too fast, you can come out confident, but they will also miss some points, because they will miss the points where they have to listen. And it's important to understand when to pause. It's also important to take down the speed, amplify it. That's really important for the communication. Now, another example we could do, and we have a piece of paper here, right? Is when you have all these words from your books, right? You have the books, and this is especially for academics. Now you have to understand real life and school is different. However, there's one thing here that you have to have in mind. Communicating that you know all the terminology, good for you. But it's kind of useless. What you really need to understand is what it means and how to apply it in a real life situation or in a different situation or scenario. Like the teacher doesn't want you to memorize all the terminology. They want you to understand it and show that you can do it. This is like where really the magic is. I've had a lot of friends that were not that great with terminology, but they understood everything. They understood how it, like the fundamentals, they understood all the principles that they had to understand. And yeah, they couldn't use that specific word, but they could say, okay, when you do this, this happens, and you can apply it in these different scenarios. And that would give them great grades because they understood it. They understood exactly how it works. However, throwing in terminologies, that's great. But you have to understand, in real life, it's the opposite. You really, and you can even ask lawyers, when they are trying to speak law, especially in the US, they don't want to use too much terminology because they want to win the case. They need to speak to normal people. So they really want to be able to communicate not as a lawyer, but as a person that understands legal terms. See the difference? So you don't speak academics, you speak normal, but you understand academics. That's the difference here. So when you're communicating, you communicate that you understand these things. And I've myself been in a situation where I just didn't remember the specific word, but I did understand the concepts. And this is key to saving you. And this is the key to actually getting high grades. Terminology is great, but at the end, understanding things and applying them. Because to learn is not to memorize. It is to master and also understand. First comes understanding, and then comes mastery. Probably you have another method as well, but in general, now I'm just simplifying. Now, what else we got here? Okay, academics, we got textbook examples. No, I think you got it. So, before I get to section 4 here, that is going to be about the pitfalls. The thing here that I would say that really emphasizes, I'm going to go into pitfalls. I wanted to go into my story, but I'm going to leave the story for last because the story is the most amazing part of this, because it's a real life situation of all the things that I mentioned coming into life. So, pitfalls. I mentioned earlier about pitfalls, and the thing with pitfalls is that when you understand your pitfalls, you're ready for anything. Now, when you do have a project and you want to say, okay, it didn't go so well with this thing, we didn't get the result we wanted, but what we're going to do is this and this, and in the future we would use the method of this person, the method of this person, because they make sense. Because in the beginning, let's be honest, we didn't know what we didn't know, so we had to do a lot of investigation, and this is how the project went. Sadly, it didn't go to the result we wanted, and that's how life works. Now, I'm not saying, oh, I didn't study, next time I'll study more. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you understand where it went wrong, what really in the process made it so it was flawed, and you can find a solution for it, that's great. Now, there's a different way, and I say it in the beginning as well, in the introduction, that if you're taking out questions, and it's random questions, if you're picking questions that you don't know anything about, there's nothing worse than to say, I don't know. You never, 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 never acknowledge I don't know. In real life, yes. But in school, no, no, no. In school, if you know your blind spots, what you do will be that you memorize things around that has a near proximity to that knowledge, or at least is very, 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 very close to it, that you know is true. So, because why am I saying this? The reason I'm saying this is because when you have someone tell you, do you know how you do this and this? And you go, no, I don't know. The teacher's mindset will go, okay, I need to help them, especially your teacher will try to save you. So they will try to ask you a question that, is very close to that. And if you don't know what they're asking you about, in most cases, you probably won't know the second question either, or the third, or the fourth. And what happens is, your knowledge space is going down, 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 until you sink. Now, that is exactly what you don't want. So, if you don't know the answer to this question, you answer with something that you do know something about. Something that is correct, something that is true, even though it's not what they're asking. And they will have a tendency to ask you again, you give them another thing, and another thing that is true, and that is correct within the curriculum. Why? Because what happens is they know you don't know at this point. I'm not saying you're fooling them, but what you are doing is you're saying, well, I don't know this, but I know this, I know this, I know this, I know this. And that means that even though you're slowly, like, you're not answering the question, you're not getting plus points, but you're still floating. You're not getting minus points. And this is the key. It's saved me many times when I didn't study for certain things. I would use this technique and it would just keep me floating. And it saved me because I just said, okay, I don't know this, but I know so many other things. And yeah, that's the savior. So that is the pitfalls. That is how you save yourself from sinking. Now, I promise you a story. So before I leave you, I'm going to leave you this story. Now, was during my bachelor's degree, and it was first semester. We had to go to second semester, so we had an exam. And for this exam, for personal reasons, I just didn't study. Came up to the exams, and I failed. Like this, they told me you're not going to pass because you didn't know anything, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So I had the luck to go to a re-examination a couple of weeks afterwards. And here, this time I was super prepared. I come in and all the things that we talked about in this webinar, I did. I come in and I even bring them like 2 presentations. I said, okay, and back then I think we had USB sticks we used. I said, okay, I have an envelope here. In each one of those, there's a presentation. You decide what presentation, and in each one there's a USB stick. And whenever, like, they chose one of them, I put it in the computer, and I was so prepared. And back then we didn't have that you could see the next slide, so I had memorized all the slides. Now the thing here, it was the same presentation. They didn't know that, but it was the same presentation. I start going, and I just give them the program. I just go for it, and it was a 25-minute examination. Or 20, but approximately. After 12 minutes, they tell me, you know what, we've heard enough. You may leave the room so we can give you your result. I go out, and in the beginning I thought, okay, this went well. And a lot of time goes by. And I said, okay, maybe it didn't. So after 5 minutes, they called me in, and they said, yeah, we spoke about this, and yeah, you need to send a complaint because you were clearly misjudged before. This was something personal because you were so ready. After 5 minutes, we knew you were ready to pass. There was no reason to fail you. We've had so many students in here, and you were the only one that was so prepared, that was so sharp. You were sharp as a tank. And, you know, this was really the best presentation we had. And we knew after 5 minutes we were done, but it was so great that we let it go for 12 minutes. And after that, we said, okay, we don't want to waste your time. You have definitely passed. So you needed to send in a complaint because this is not okay what this teacher did to you. And I said, no, don't worry about it. I failed because I was lazy. It's my fault. No, don't worry. It was me. I own this. That was totally on me. But yeah, it was great. And today I actually have now friendship with one of those teachers. But anyways, the thing here is that the moral of the story is when you're so prepared, you really shine through. And it's not about confidence, it's about preparation. Now, of course, confidence takes you a certain way, but being over cocky can also make it so that you don't do so well. It's about preparation, rehearsing. And if you rehearse like I just told you in this webinar, you'll do great. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. My name is Leonardo, and if you need more tools, don't worry, there are more videos you can check. There are some courses, some free, some paid, but there are some courses you can check out, and you will learn a lot of stuff that will make you better as a presenter. Thank you for watching.